Today's show will include a scoring bonanza in Detroit. Philly fixes their passing attack. The Buccaneers offense is a big deal. Denver has a wild blowout against the Colts, and Miami falls flat at Houston. Let's talk about the biggest takeaways from the Week 15 action. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by DraftKings Pick 6 and LIV Golf. I'm Jim Coventry. You can catch me on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. Instant reaction number one, a scoring bonanza in Detroit. So 48-42 Bills, but not everybody ate for fantasy. Crazy game that you have 90 points and not everyone goes off. So first, the Bills win this thing. The Bills have an early, fairly big lead. I believe it was 21-7 in this thing. And then they just basically held them off, held Detroit off, kept enough of a lead the whole way through. Detroit had no magic to happen. Josh Allen did what Josh Allen does. So what does Josh Allen do? Throws for 362 and 2 touchdowns. And of course, big day on the ground, 69 yards and 2 more touchdowns. So again, another 4 total touchdowns for Allen, making a massive case for his MVP potential here. Again, they're 10-3 right now. What an opportunity there. Now, James Cook, we love James Cook this week, and he only had 14 carries. It was plenty. 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he also caught a pass for 28 yards. But this was a game, remember, Detroit was down, like that whole linebacking crew is decimated. And that was where James Cook was going to win. They'd get him into the second level. He'd have a big advantage there. And sometimes he took it past the second level, 41-yard touchdown run there. So he was great. Who was the leading receiver? Ty Johnson. 5 catches. Nobody. Shakir had 1 more catch. 114 yards. Nobody else had 64 or more than that. And that was it. Ty Johnson. Nobody saw that coming. And who was their second leading receiver? Keon Coleman, 1 catch, 64 yards. So if you played in PPR, he got 7.4. Dalton Kincaid, decent, 4 for 53. It's about what he was doing before the injury. You know, a lot of 3 for 30s in there. Detroit was a tough matchup on tight ends, so it was actually a good performance. Khalil Shakir gets a late touchdown because he was only 6 for 39. That touchdown, again, gets you enough for fantasy. Gets you 15. You live with that. You were hoping for more. But realistically, Amari Cooper wasn't on the stat sheet. Stunned. I haven't, like, obviously I'm watching 5 games at a time, so I will check snap counts later and all that. Couldn't even tell you 5 games on how often he was on the field or not. Didn't see anything about an injury on the RotoWire studies. I checked those. I'm writing up these games that are going on, so can't explain that one. But in theory, Cooper had a good matchup. A lot of man coverage. Detroit likes the blitz. He had 14 targets last week. Nothing. So there's that. So again, based on who you played, you know, of course, Josh Allen, he's been carrying the team forever. So I said, but Cook was a nice surprise for those that were not sure. Again, nobody played Ty Johnson unless you're in the deepest of deep leagues. And other than that, that would have been about it. The Detroit side. So realistically, if you started Jahmyr Gibbs, you were fortunate because he got 2 second-half touchdowns. He cashed. He cashed all day. 83 yards receiving, 8 for 31 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. So beautiful day for Jahmyr Gibbs. Not so much for David Montgomery. He did catch 4 for 31, so there was that. 5 carries, 4 yards. Game script. Usually the Lions are playing from ahead. They're able to dictate. Not in this game. This game was playing in a deficit, and that worked completely against David Montgomery. Obviously, you start Montgomery every week. Nobody saw that coming. I guess for PPR leagues, you know, the 4 catches for 31, at least they got him close to 8 points, which is not a 0. It's not what you wanted, but you'll take that. But here is the beneficiary, I should say. Jared Goff throws 59 attempts. And of course, in a 48-42 game, the passing game goes off. 494 and 5 touchdowns. Now, Jared Goff, I had him as a top 12-ish, right around there. But I certainly didn't have him as an elite fantasy option this week. Maybe I should have. Clearly, I should have. But huge day for Goff. He even ran for 13 yards. So Goff was a week winner. When we look at the fantasy points and they're done, he wasn't like super far off of Josh Allen. Obviously, Allen beat him. You know, the 69 rushing yards put him over the top there, but it wasn't that far off. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 18 targets, 14 for a $193 and a touchdown. He had been not playing at the ceiling level all year because he's not getting the targets. He's a great player, but he hadn't been getting targets. Well, he got him here. So if you start him this week, Amon-Ra St. Brown crushed for you. And Sam Laporta, 10 targets, 7 for 111. Jameson Williams gets a late touchdown, 3 for 37 and a touchdown. Tim Patrick, if he had to use him, he scored a touchdown. So other than that, look, this is what we talk about these teams. Big loss for Detroit. This gives Detroit their second loss of the season. It puts them in a tie with the Eagles. I'm not sure who the Eagles lost both of their games to, but this is an interconference game for the Lions. So in terms of tiebreaker, my guess is off the top of my head, the Eagles probably have 2 NFC losses, but I'm not positive of that. And if that's the case, well, then that means the Lions would have the edge right now. But again, we'll see how the schedule shakes out. But that is absolutely something. So anyway, going forward with the Lions, look, I mean, you don't need me to tell you. You play him every week. You know the Goff thing. He's been getting more attempts lately. But depending if they get leads in games, we can see the game script change dramatically. But again, you don't need me to tell you much about them. The problem back to the Bills. If you got Amari Cooper right now and you advanced and there was a 0, again, watching 5 games, I don't know the story behind it. I'll find out when I rewatch this thing tomorrow. But right now, you can't play him with any level of confidence if you advanced and you got a 0, unless there's a reason why he didn't, get a target in this one when Josh Allen threw 34 passes. Again, baffling to me. So anyway, great game. Bills 10-3. Still the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes got injured his ankle. We don't know his status, but again, 2 games behind, 14 games in the book. I think they're 11-3, I should say. Few games left, so probably going to be tough to catch them, but I guess we'll see what happens with that. Instant reaction number 2. We have Philly fixes their passing attack. And did they ever? So we had the narrative all week long. It was after last week's game, A.J. Brown was asked, what's the problem? And he said, passing. No, he didn't say Jalen Hurts. He didn't say, I'm not getting enough targets. And what he said was true. They're a great running team. But there are games, and I said this on the Start Sit show today. There are games in the playoffs. They're going to have to pass the ball to win. They're going to have to be able to attack teams through the air. Because in the playoffs, hyper-specific game planning. As good as the Eagles' line is, as good as Saquon Barkley is, you're going to have to win through the air. Well, they won through the air. Jalen Hurts, and it was balanced. I mean, Philly ran 42 times because they had a big lead in the second half. They threw 32, but it was effective throwing. And basically, you do what's smart. Oh, let's see. Let's get 12 targets to Devontae Smith. Let's get 11 to A.J. Brown. Both of them eat. 110 yards and a touchdown for Brown, 109 yards and a touchdown for Smith. If you started Saquon, it was a tough day. You got 19 for 65 on the ground. He had a 22-yard run. Pittsburgh was tough. They were not good at defending shotgun runs, but Barkley just never got into a flow. And 19 carries, I get it. He had enough carries. But some of those carries with a lead, a little bit different. Caught 2 passes for 9 yards. So if you started Barkley, it was not the game you wanted. For sure it wasn't. But hopefully you started A.J. Brown. On the Start Sit show, I told people I buy into the narrative. I was conservative. I said Brown will get a couple extra targets. I believed it was more, but you can't go overboard on these things. It's a narrative, but it's exactly what Brown needed to see. And it looked like Brown got dinged up late in the game, but it looks like he's fine. So we're good with that. So, great deal there. I see a super chat question very end of the show, and I'll make sure I get it before kickoff, but I've got this a podcast, so I've got to get this in for the podcast. So, all right. So anyway, Philadelphia, Grant Calcaterra, 1 catch for 22 yards. Told people not to start him. He's played like 4 games for Goddard. 3 of them were cake matchups, and he did well. There was a tough matchup. He had 1 catch. He did have a catch called back by penalty, but it doesn't help you for fantasy. So there's that. Jalen Hurts. People were asking me Start-Sit questions about him, and I'm looking. Here's my point with Jalen Hurts. He has so many outs. That's the point. He has so many different ways. He could score 3 rushing touchdowns. He could pass for multiple touchdowns. He could have a big passing day, not that he always does. There are so many ways he could get it done. And that's why I keep him every week as a top 3 quarterback in my rankings. I usually it's Allen, Lamar, and then Hurts because he has so many outs. And that's the whole point. It doesn't take one type of game script for Jalen Hurts to get going. Yeah, there's games he hasn't had the best of fantasy games, but he's always had a high floor. And you got to bank on that. And if you advance with Barkley, look, don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. I mean, it's been great this season. Not much time left, but he's going to pop again. He's going to pop again. A couple games left. The Pittsburgh side, look, let's make this real simple. No George Pickens, no chance. Calvin Austin's a nice player. Very nice player. And he caught a one long pass. He goes 5 for 65. Nice game. But Calvin Austin isn't changing anything. You know that. And Freiermuth gets a touchdown. Good if you start him in fantasy. But other than Austin, 65 yards, nobody else had more than 22. Wilson, 14 to 22, 122 yards. And this is a game they trailed. But he had no chance. He's got no chance. Russell Wilson has to have it set up. There's going to be play action. Well, early in the game, the running game had no traction. Philly shut them down. I thought that Arthur Smith get the 3 tight ends out there. Thought they'd get something going. They didn't get anything going. And then play action didn't work because of that. And there was no threat. And the Philly corners are way better than what Pittsburgh rolled out at receivers. So this is a team basically drawing dead. And that's a problem. They drew dead, and then they fell behind. And halftime, it was still close. It was 17-13 at the half. Then the third quarter, Philly adds a field goal on, early fourth quarter touchdown, and that's it. They just kind of bled them out. And that's the way Philadelphia can do things to teams. And this, it was a home game for Philly, but this is a tough Steelers team. Very tough Steelers team. And yet, Philly, really did what they have to do. They're a dominant team. And everybody got worried about them before. It's not a team we're worrying about. Because, again, with Hurts, the offense has a lot of outs. So I think we have to really, really understand that and take some solace in knowing this offense can be just fine. Hey, let's take a quick break to tell you about the DraftKings Pick 6.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code, ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, instant reaction number 3. The Buccaneers offense is a big deal. The Buccaneers walked into the Chargers stadium. I know it's not a great home field advantage. Chargers have been an excellent defense all year, and they have slowed down some really, really good offenses. Not the Buccaneers. And look, personally in my own fantasy league, I was the moron who started Jameis Winston over Baker Mayfield. That one stung. Baker Mayfield, I did not see him throwing 4 touchdowns. I did not see them putting up 40 points. I did not see him running for an additional 25 yards. Baker Mayfield shredded an excellent defense. Look, you give credit to Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator. Baker Mayfield is doing a wonderful job at running this offense. Bucky Irving, start-sit questions. We told people, start Bucky Irving. It was, the coach said that he would keep him active if he had no concerns that his back wouldn't lock up. And that was the case. So it didn't. Now, Bucky Irving doesn't find the end zone, but 15 carries for 117 yards, 2 catches. He lost 4 yards. But if you're in a PPR 13-7, it wasn't the 20 you wanted, but it was a tough matchup, and it was solid. Rachaad White does fine here. 15 for 64. He catches a touchdown at 17 yards. So if you started him, you were in great shape. Mike Evans owned this defense. I was saying in the starts, so some people actually asked me about Mike Evans. I'm like, you know, and you know this, you don't sit Mike Evans. Mike Evans, as good as their zone defenses with the Chargers, it's not Mike Evans good. And they have no corner to handle him. And Mike Evans, 9 for $159 and 2 touchdowns. Mike Evans, a week winner. One of the many this week. There are a good number of them. So it'd be interesting to see how some of these fantasy matchups shake out. Jalen McMillan, this one I didn't see coming either. 5 for 75 and a touchdown. He had the 2 touchdowns last week. I thought, okay, it was a nice game. It was a nice little breakout for him. But the Chargers really, with that zone, they suppress a lot of receivers. Well, McMillan's had 2 great games in a row. And if you were smarter than me and you started them, you end up with a great opportunity. At this point, with the way this offense is humming, the way the teams can't pay attention to Jalen McMillan, it's a reasonable flex play. And he's been better than that. He's been way better at the last 2 weeks. But again, you're going to get 75, yards every week. Maybe, probably not. But you start him. I think you get him in the lineup if you have room. Obviously, if you're loaded up with talent, then you might not be able to do that. So there's that. But again, Mayfield, look, obviously, if you have Mayfield and you don't have an elite quarterback with him, I don't think there's a scenario you're going to consider sitting him anymore. So there's that. So, Baker Mayfield is the man right now. 4 touchdowns. He's a top 5 fantasy quarterback on the season, and I don't see any signs of that going away. All right, Los Angeles side of the ball. Won't spend a lot of time here. This was potentially an easy matchup for Justin Herbert. Well, the thing is, and we've said this since they lost J.K. Dobbins, they don't have a rushing attack. It makes it really, really hard on the passing attack. And Herbert throws for 195 and 2 touchdowns in a game they trailed. Now, at the halftime, this game was the Chargers were winning this 17-13. And then Bucs go 27-0 in the second half. Insane. 1 interception for Herbert. Threw one up. Jamel Dean. I can't remember who came out with it. I'm going to forget who came out. I think it was Jamel Dean, but I'm not sure on that one. The rushing attack, though. Edwards, 8 for 23. Vidal, 3 for 9. There's no rushing attack. The interior offensive line, not good. So there's a problem with that. In the receiving game, if you started Ladd McConkey, again, he was a late game time decision. So if you had other players, you were able to hold him and use him. 5 for 58 and a touchdown. Again, not the game against the Bucs you thought you'd get, but certainly nobody's complaining. A lot of you started Stone Smart as a streamer, 5 for 50. I don't think anyone can argue with that. I think that's a solid play as things go. So we got that. And then Quentin Johnson scores again. 10 targets for Quentin Johnson because they trailed. And 33 attempts for Herbert. So going forward, the Chargers, though, just watch the matchups. It's this offense is not really rolling in terms of the rushing attack. So if they play a team that can really get a great pass rush from the interior, or they can hunker down on the pass, the Chargers are in a bit of trouble. They're 8-6 right now. We got to check out the playoff standings and all that look right now. The Broncos win was big today. Before I get to my next instant reaction, I saw that Justin had a super chat earlier. So because you paid for that, I'm going to get you to comment, even though we're in the podcast right now. So you're saying Jacoby Myers, I guess you mean, or Jaden Reed. Right now, we don't know if Aiden O'Connell's playing. And unless I've been working all day, so I don't know that any word changed on it. If Aiden O'Connell's the starter and you know that for sure, you got to start Jacoby Myers. If we don't know as of kickoff, which is in a couple minutes, you got to go Jaden Reed, because if it's Desmond Ridder, I don't think Jacoby Myers is getting you that double digits. So there's that. Again, I don't normally answer these questions during this, but again, you did super chat. So Tyler, I'm definitely appreciating you for doing that. All right. We are going to go over more of this week's reactions after we take a short break. All right. Instant reaction number 4. Denver has a wild blowout against the Colts. So this was a weird game because this was not a blowout. That's why I said it's a wild blowout. This was not a wild blowout for much of this game. But the deal in it is this game was very competitive early, but a lot of mistakes. Bo Nix throws 3 interceptions. He looked completely overmatched against a good Indianapolis defense. The running game, Indy's a decent run defense. They had no element of a running game. They came out with Jaleel McLaughlin as a lead. That was never going to work. Tyler, I answered your question already. So Jaleel McLaughlin, 7 for 21. And Javonte Williams, 6 for 15. Estime, 5 for 13. They can't run. They just cannot run the ball. Offensive line doesn't block well. That's a big problem. Well, the passing game, Nix throws 3 touchdowns with the 3 interceptions, but it was not a good fantasy day. What ends up happening is Jonathan Taylor. This game is the Colts are winning this thing. They're up 13-7. And Jonathan Taylor takes in what looks to be a 41-yard touchdown run. And as he's crossing the goal line, he loses the ball. Doesn't lose it. He starts to transition it for no reason. Guys are doing this on occasion. Don't understand why. tuck the ball again over there. Well, fumbles out of the side of the end zone, and Denver gets the ball. At that point, the whole game steamrolled against them. And Denver ends up scoring a field goal in the third. So they're still down 13-10 going in the fourth. 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. One of them, so the Colts get behind, and they know Anthony Richardson doesn't have a chance. So they try a trick play, getting the ball to Adonai Mitchell on the side, who's going to throw the ball back across the field. Well, Nick Bonito runs right in through, intercepts it, pick 6, ball game. So then once the Indy was behind and Denver was sending the passes, remember, Indy's down 3 linemen. That was it. It was over. So Anthony Richardson, 17-38. Ugly. And again, because he had to pass 2 interceptions. Now, if you use him for fantasy, he got an early rushing touchdown, so he got you something. There was that. Jonathan Taylor, because of that touchdown off the board, kind of hurt you there. So he ends up going, Jonathan Taylor, 22 for $107. And other than that, he had 1 catch, 4 yards. So fantasy day, not great. The touchdown would really made it a strong day. Josh Downs, didn't recommend starting him in this one. I said if you had to, you had to, but there's supposed to be 21-mile-an-hour winds here. I think that did impact the game. And 3 for 32 for Downs. Pittman does okay. But other than that, Indy right now, big loss for them. I don't know the playoff picture, but I imagine it puts them almost out of it at 6-8. Expecting him with the Texans pulling off a big win. I don't see them having much of a chance of pulling the division. So they're probably close to out if they're not completely out. And then we have the Broncos, 9-5, super, super alive for that playoff spot. And look, the offense is not ready for prime time. If they play a good team in the playoffs, it'd be a problem. But that said, their defense is going to be fun. And if somehow they're in the playoffs and they're playing a team and it's a weather game, that defense could really show up. Now, Patrick Surtain was helped off the field late, so there's that. The only player I want to talk about the Denver side I forgot was Cortland Sutton. He got a late touchdown, 20-yard touchdown, saved his fantasy day. I didn't recommend starting him today. Again, with the wins, Bo Nix's weaker arm. But at that point, the game got out of control. The 20-yard touchdown gets Sutton to 3 for 32 and a touchdown because he had 2 for 12 otherwise. Fortunately, the touchdown bailed you, gave you a floor game. You definitely will take that every day. Other than that, though, like I said, not a lot going on with this offense right now. Hey, LIV Golf, it's a new season of LIV Golf Fantasy coming in 2025. New prizes, new ways to win, and more. They're coming in the new season. Get ready to play and sign up now at fantasy.livegolf.com. All right, instant reaction number 5. Miami falls flat at Houston. Look, Miami had an opportunity here. They were playing a Houston team. And when I broke this game down for start sit, I made it real clear. Houston has been abysmal at defending crossing routes. They have a great pass rush, but Tua usually gets it out quick. And they often use Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on crossers. And I thought, wow, this could not be a better stylistic fit. Didn't think Achane would be able to run on this defense because Miami doesn't run well anyway. Achane's a great receiver. And so I thought, yeah, Tua's going to get it done. Tua's been hot. Soiled the bed. Horrible, horrible performance. First of all, Jalen Waddle, after the late first half, maybe leaves with a knee injury, but he was only targeted twice. Nothing. Wasn't really made a priority. Tyreek Hill gets some late targets. Again, not a priority. 2 for 36. Tua throws 3 interceptions. The pop gun arm was on full display. Playing in Houston. Pop gun arm completely on display. Everything has to be perfect for this guy. If it's not perfect, they're not getting it done. I thought he'd be able to get it with the matchup. Didn't happen. Leading receiver, Malik Washington, 5 for 52. Leading. Now, Jonnu Smith, when Waddle went out, got a few extra targets, 11 targets, leads the team, 9 for 48 and a touchdown. Last week, we were worried he didn't do anything in regulation. He ended up coming through in overtime. Well, he gets it done again. So Jonnu Smith continues to get it done. Achane, look, it's just the receiving points, right? Because yardage-wise, Achane gets you 76 yards, but 7 catches. So, again, if you're in a PPR league and you're using them, that's the way to go. So you're in great shape, for that. But otherwise, the lack of the offensive line helping the running game has been a real problem. Houston side of the ball, not good for fantasy. If you had Nico Collins, you could scrape by. 2 touchdowns is great. 4 for 17. So the 2 touchdowns, again, it bailed you out. But, man, fortunately, he had those touchdowns because that passing attack, 131 yards on 26 attempts for C.J. Stroud. Now, they had a bit of a lead, but they passed more than they ran, 26 passes, only 20 rushing attempts, and that includes, there's been probably some kneel downs at the end. I think there were some kneel downs there, but Joe Mixon, 12 for 23 on the ground. Miami's a good run defense. So, but fortunately, Mixon got caught 5 for 33. So if you play him in a PPR, you got 10. But right now, yeah, this offensive line's a problem for Houston. The offense is a problem. You're still starting Collins. You're still starting Mixon because Mixon does have fantastic upside in any given week. But CJ Stroud, we've been saying, he's not a fantasy starter. He hasn't been. He obviously, when he didn't have Collins, we made some excuses. But even when he's had Collins, very few games in the last, 9 weeks that he's been a fantasy factor. So obviously, you've probably been sitting him. It's got to stay that way. Miami, I have no idea what to expect going forward because last week, even 2 of the last 3 games, we saw Hill and Waddle getting very involved and then to go to that. So right now, and them dropping to 6 and 8, I imagine they're probably about done in the playoff race. I remember hearing last week that they'd be eliminated with a loss, and that sounds like kind of where they're at. So not looking up for them, but Houston 9-5 with Indy having lost. Yeah, I assume the Texans either won the division, and if not, they're right on the doorstep of that. So they'll have that Saturday afternoon, 4:30 Eastern game, and that will be it. Hey, RotoWire covers all the fantasy sports. Did you know you get a free 2-day trial with no credit card needed? To check everything out we have to offer, you go to rotowire.com/pod. If you like us, join the team. If not, we're just glad you looked. Want to thank our sponsors, DraftKings Pick 6 and LIV Golf. Thanks to everyone for listening. Come back next week for another edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast.